Or moving on to the last but not least presentation of this today's afternoon seminar. And I present, it's about creating systems in the future for how to we make more use of AI in a societal change. So I bring on you Michela Magas, and she has a very long CV of different skills. She's very much more active in music, in culture, but actually you're also a little part where I'm a cinema fan myself, and you actually, how you managed to get on the site of Wall Street 2 and be casted. I don't know how that happened, but I need some instructions. Yeah, I need to train that, because that's sort of a dream scenario to be with Oliver Stone. But on the other hand, so you have really been mixing around thoughts about the future. You are the founder of ICF, Industry Commons, Foundation, and it would be great to hear on your visions for the future. I'm gonna just put your presentation also. See if we have a. I can move it to the hard drive, see if it works. Loading. It's like in the old days, you know, peace, hello, letter, and all that stuff. Yeah. But what is happening? Why? How do you know it exactly 74% left? I don't know. So here we go. Thank you. Welcome on stage. Yeah, I can watch it as well.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Linus, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I've been working with Linus for quite a few years, and you'll see where I've managed to drag Linus into sort of places that he didn't really plan to go with IP Screener, or not necessarily wasn't a sort of part of the initial vision, at least. But now we've kind of brought IP Screener into big European consortia with lots of really big industry there, and he's starting to get big requests from some of those companies. I advise the European Commission for very, very long time on innovation. I've been part of some things that have kind of happened at level, also at the G7 leaders, part of Innovation 7. I'm also on advisory board of CERN. So this idea of combining culture and communities with research and industry is something that I'm well known for bridging. And we have been running labs for over 12 years. Our biggest one was at Kotahoa. We took over several buildings, and it was in 2018 before the pandemic. Over 800 people prototyping new kinds of solutions, and the sort of stuff we do generates a tremendous amount of IP. It's really fertile. These are some of the faces. Very diverse communities that include every possible level of knowledge and domains of knowledge. Amazing professors, amazing experts, and really the thing that thrills me most about what I do is when I get a bunch of intelligent people in the room together, a bit like this crowd here. And I think, the best result I could have from today would be to actually get some of you to join in some of the things we're trying to do now. So without further ado, I'm going to start from hands-on innovation. So some of our history, so that you can get an idea about the sort of IPs that we've been creating across the board. So this is Victoria Modesta. She's a bionic artist. We put her at the center of our lab at a certain point and looked at how we can address the sort of challenges of her interaction with technologies in ways that would make her someone we would all want to aspire to. That hence a very provocative statement, and a stance from someone who then became fellow of MIT and who is not afraid to challenge preconceptions. And in fact, without us knowing, this was Obama guest editing an edition of Wired US, and he was asked to select the Future of Technology Frontiers, and we ended up occupying a whole page, unbeknown to us, as people who were challenging this whole field. And it was all the stuff we were doing was data-driven systems with the community. And at this point, what we were doing, for example, was we actually, in this quest to make Victoria someone we could all aspire to, we worked with neurofeedback, but not in terms of collecting data from a person. We actually turned it on its head. We actually looked at how does a person take over technology and can drive it, and what happens with that data. And of course, there's lots of discussion about how you deal with intellectual property at that point. So what she trained to do here for over a week in our labs with huge amount of experts was to not only create a performance, sing and dance. She's, for example, someone who closed the Paralympics in Rio. So she's kind of the Lady Gaga of this world. But to also use her, use neurofeedback to change the lighting systems and action mapping in the performance. And we thought this is going to be impossible because she has to do so many things simultaneously that it's going to be very, very hard. But it turned out that by the end of the week, she was able to do it seamlessly. And so we thought we have something that's really interesting in terms of research. You'll see here a still from a documentary that MIT Media Lab made about the work we were doing. And what I'm particularly proud about in this photo is that so many women participating in technology prototyping. In Cote d'Ivoire, we had an ambition. We achieved more than 53% of women participation, or those who declare themselves as women out of 4 gender categories. And what was great about that was that, you know, when we talk about patents and stuff like that, we still have a huge disparity between that are registered by men and by women. And I really like to support this space. So what we then did was we went to Slush in Helsinki, said, what would you like to do with us? Because I opened the track for them the year before, and then said, you know, what would you like to do? I said, we would like to spend a week before you open Slush cooking up new things. And we actually put a person who is a vocal coach, very, very professional vocal coach from the Sibelius Academy, who's also very proud to be a blind singer, Rike Hänninen, at the center of our labs, with basically data scientists and accessibility designers and all kinds of people. As I say, the amount of IP that's generated while we prototype is really quite insane, so we decided to track all the instances of IP in this space. And so what happened here was that sometimes you twist a very simple application by putting it in a new context. In this case, super, super simple. We said to the audiences of startups and investors at Slush, you know, who wants to be part of this? You know, Rika said that the first thing that worries her when she performs is that she doesn't know how people feel because she can't see them. And so in this case, we are taking a super simple solution, but then putting it into a new context, which was we actually created a circuit between the audience, just pulse sensors, nothing special. But the system was quite new, and it was actually communicating to the singer. And we thought nobody would care to get fitted with this stuff. You know, they are all there to discuss business. There was a rush to the stage. We didn't have enough of them. There was this rock and roll moment. And then that was just a simple thing. But then we wanted to continue this. We did very, very, very many things. But one of the things we wanted to continue was this business with neurofeedback and see how much we can get control over a system, or how much we can contribute from the person themselves and their data input into how the system is driven. And our neurofeedback team created a system where they adapted another system for clinical trials where for people with anxiety attacks, they use neurofeedback to visualize their brain activity, and brain activity changes before and onset of an attack. So if you notice the change, you can start to train to control it. But they took that and they turned it into a system that allowed you to play music directly from your brain if you could train to control it. And so in the lab, we had everybody try this system, and people were training for about 2 hours, so start to train to control music directly from their brain, going up and down the musical scale. And for after about 2 hours, they would start to be able to do something. And that was quite amazing, actually, already, you know, because if you think about your combination of motorics and skills that are required to train on an instrument, that takes quite a long time. And then Rika put the neurofeedback sensor on, and she was able to play instantly. And that was just incredible. Like, everybody looked at each other and went, wait, so who's the capable person in the room right now? And then how do we design systems for like future of work and the future of interaction with digital technologies and data-driven systems? Well, it certainly had a lot. It made us think a lot about this. So, of course, these are the moments that I then transfer to the European Commission, and I go, well, actually, you know, when you're making decisions, you really need to know about this. You need to know about how we can turn things on their heads. And of course, the thing that will interest you is that we were tracking all of the instances of IP that were generated. People said, oh, there's going to be so many gray areas, you're not going to be able to identify this one instance. Well, you can. I mean, we haven't had problems with doing that. And at that time, we just decided to register, hash it, and register it in a blockchain, but we were able to register. I started to introduce enabling systems for this community because I noticed a few problems with proprietary IP, problems with people not being attributed, their skills not being attributed to them. And also several other systems that we introduced that resulted in this. This was in 2015. We had results from research. We needed to lower the entry barrier to research, so we actually translated all of the data stuff that we had that could be fed through devices and through custom-made microboards, etc. Lower the entry barrier to entrepreneurs and people who can run with them, who are operating close to markets. Create low-level prototypes with them. There was a rush on those. We thought maybe we'd end up with 1 or 2 interesting products. We ended up with 11. First toolkit was ready in May that year. We had a working prototype in September because we tracked intellectual property, because we had a very, very clear idea between the industry and the big players and all of the elements of the ecosystem, all the participants. The people who were inventing things, and in this case it was an invention that went from prototyping first in media, with media data, to primary industry. It was a patent for primary industry. They were able to register it immediately. There were no wranglings over who owns what and what part is owned by whom. It was very clearly delineated in the ecosystem as to who had what. So this was a very short time to market, and we ended up being known for producing MIT innovators under 35 and 30 under 30 Forbes, and that was the patent. And then he actually is a CTO in Stockholm now, and 1 million follow-up funding for neurofeedback, etc. And there's tons of this, and the industry just kept coming to us. So they all wanted to be part of this space because it was super fertile in terms of IP, but it was also interesting because you could test your own product or your own system within this context, and this crowd is really hands-on, and it allows you to find completely new directions, developments for your product. Or for academics, we had instances where 2 teams, after 2 days, were writing a new paper, that kind of thing. That was in Örebro in the AI Impact Lab. So why so many people from industry? Well, of course, this business of working across domains, where these kind of barriers to domain silos have kind of been lowered because of the common system that we now use, they find a great testbed in these ecosystem environments, where we contribute with our IP, but not in ways that just fall through the ground. We track and trace them. We make sure that people can make informed decisions. And they are solving also these very well-known problems, which, at the time it was very clear to us that these things were big issues. And things were becoming more and more issues for big industry as well. And so we were actually solving them, of course, in some very rudimentary ways, originally with writing APIs to solve interoperability. Now we have much more sophisticated ways. And because the industry came to us, I just went, right, this is really interesting. I think we can scale this, because this is a really good template for scaling it for cross-domain industrial collaboration. And how do we track intellectual property across domains in industry, and how do we track assets? So I launched something called Industry Commons. Business Sweden actually encouraged us to register in Stockholm County. They said this is really important. I'm very grateful for that, because Sweden's been a fantastic place to build this in. I use a picture of a accidental ecosystem we found on the beach, which has a piece of industry kind of embedded in it. And of course, the first thing we were looking at is interoperability. We spent 3 years building ontology ecosystems, because aside from using APIs, which are quite labor intensive and you have to keep updating them and stuff, we needed some fixed reference points. And we're part of a huge consortium in Europe where we built this big ontology ecosystem. And what came out, and I'm currently elected president of, is the Knowledge Graph Alliance, which is a global organization, has people like Airbus, Bosch, Michelin, Total Energies, etc. And then the next layer of what we wanted to do, this was, after interoperability, my main concern. I could see that this was so important, which was, you know, how do we create IP and industrial agreements in this context? How do we make sure that we track intellectual property across this multi-domain systems? And we've been working with another huge industrial consortium on that, as well as systems of resilience for industry, which is a big topic. So basically, you know, arguably, everything has been discussed here today is also relevant for resilience for industry. When you talk to industrial managers, they don't necessarily tell you that. They don't tell you that, you know, management of IP and assets is their top priority. They think of resilience as, you know, how do we cope in black swan events with sort of supply chains, etc. But actually, I would say arguably IP and agreements and being able to do what IP Trina does, which is to actually find alternatives or find where there are clusters of substitutes for when you have when you need to do that. I think are extremely important for industrial resilience, very much top of the agenda. And then, of course, these are stacks that build on top of systems of responsibility. We know corporate social responsibility comes into it, data ethics, but systems of beliefs. And when I say systems of beliefs, you'll say, what do you mean? How do you embed that? But we know that all data is biased. We also know that there are some serious issues with biases in data in terms of how the systems then malfunction because they are biased towards a certain types of population. We know that people like Joy Boulomini have sort of developed whole careers on the back of encouraging to become more aware of these things. So basically, systems of beliefs cover that. If we all decide there are certain things we need to watch out for in order to preserve our societal values, then we embed those in the system. And so we are actually funded, we originally suggested to match FAIR data, which is this European system of making technologies findable, interoperable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, to match it with the just data operator, researcher, the people who work with data to aim to be judicious, unbiased, safe and transparent when they work with data. And fortunately, after it was accepted as an idea by the European Open Science Cloud and landed in all sorts of recommendations in the European Commission, and on lots of directorates for ICT and for industrial research, we got funded by Vinnova to run just data annotation. So we are now building that, and this is what I'd love to pick your brains on. But what I think is extremely interesting is when you do build an ecosystem like this that's hyper-connected, when you start tracking and tracing all these elements, when you build breakthrough innovation on top, it's suddenly trackable and traceable. The IP is trackable and traceable in the system. So rather than IP being generated in an incubator in a corner of a room, and unless you really know about it as a large player, it might kind of gazump your space and might surprise you, or for startups, it might be actually really difficult to get out of that corner. You actually suddenly are embedded in a system. And that means you can model current and emerging market possibilities, and it means a couple of interesting things if you're into IP. One is that you can just notify use of someone's IP in modeling, and then that proprietor can make an informed decision. The second one is that you can actually identify clusters of IP because they're linked. And rather than the usual sort of instance that we register in patenting, we actually have clusters. And that becomes very interesting because there are some differentiating points between one cluster and another. So, what do we do with that? Well, as I say, the first one on interoperability, we run the Knowledge Alliance. Already mentioned that. I'd encourage you, if this is an interesting element, these reference points about knowledge are proving to be extremely complementary to all the other statistical modeling that is prevalent in sort of LLMs and LMMs. The READY project, where we are testing on real industrial demonstrators, and we're currently on a big one with VW. We're trying to solve a problem in their assembly line. This is really amazing for us because we're always very, very much hands-on, and we learn how these things work or how they can work or what are the alternatives by actually experimenting in a test and experimentation facility. So we're running what we call a TEF later this month. I'll show you briefly some visualizations we've done of how we manage data in different ways to allow for better decision making. So this Sankey is actually demonstrating the production of a glue lamp and glue lamp sheets, and it shows you batches and how much of that, for example, is waste, and so you get very clear ideas. So this was loading data in real time and then mapping out, for example, where you can use stuff for recycling, so you get very clear idea. This is one view of the data set that we were using. This is another view where we were now looking at individual manufacturers. So this is now loading all the different manufacturers and all of the instances of the product. And then we are zooming into one manufacturer there. And what we were particularly proud of with this one is that we were able to go from the actual production line and then map it for knowledge reference documentation. So here what it's doing is actually showing you that this is part of the sheet batch is part of a traceable resource unit, which is mapped in the IOF ontology and a supply chain reference ontology. And that's part of a high-level ontology, which is the BFO, basic formal ontology, labeled as a material entity and an independent continuant. But you can simultaneously follow this on the legal side, because we started to build a legal ontology of IP rights, and therefore the polycarbonate compositions is the concept, not the actual item. And we are mapping that as an IP asset, which is specified in this new ontology of IP rights, and that's an information content entity and a generically dependent continuant, with then at top level we can connect them in terms of knowledge. So we are starting to follow from the distance on the ground in real time, how do we reference this with knowledge all the way to the top level ontology. And the other part that I stopped the video a bit early was that we are then going from an vision of enterprise integration and then a connected IP screener, and we started to be able to track for individual items in the production chain what other items and suppliers are available. We've actually hooked IP screener into these systems, and that's how Linus started to get all these inquiries. So this is us addressing the, let's say, social ethical aspects. How do we aim to be judicious, bias, safe, and transparent when we work with data? And one example I can show you, and this is again through experimentation and running labs and pushing kind of labs into environments that are not usually used to this. They're used to having normal kind of conference presentations. We actually like to be hands-on and prototype while we do that. This was the IKEA team, the combination of the guys from Delft and from Sweden, who came together with us to prototype a new way to interact with the customer in the digital space that completely dispensed with GDPR. And he actually created an anonymous session that was based on the idea that when you walk into an IKEA store, you don't want someone to be tracking you and following you and stalking you, but you want a friendly customer service representative who can ask you a couple of intelligent questions, and based on your answer can immediately map out what's available to you. And that was done by using a knowledge graph. So they built a shell over the actual digital catalog. They created this anonymous session where the user is able to decide whether they own their own data, they want to keep their own data, or they don't want to save it. And they connected it to, with the help of the knowledge owner inside the company, to the knowledge graph of the entire IKEA catalog. And bearing in mind that IKEA Interglobal Systems are dealing with an enormous amount of customers through their franchises. And what was incredible about this was not only was this a much more seamless experience for the user, when the user came in, where the customer came in with a request for a new type of category of product, it took them one afternoon to add that category to the knowledge graph and connect the whole space, and it came up with the correct results. Now, what would normally take by training like models in the cloud and having all this tagging and having an army of people reprogramming everything would be sort of like 6 months of work to redo everything. And the data carbon footprint in these 6 months, because you're storing so much stuff in the cloud, is enormous. And so in terms of time to market, in terms of how many people had to be employed to do that, in terms of how much carbon footprint you saved, etc., and you make your calculation in IKEA. This was really quite remarkable, and we did that in less than a week. And what's really interesting from the point of view of regulation is that when regulators came together and said, oh, we're going to do this GDPR thing, nobody sat down and said, well, are there better solutions to actually dispense with? Of course, your web browser would still need to ask you about GDPR because the web browser stores the information, but this is from the point of view of a company. And from the point of view of a company, there are better solutions. And nobody actually sat down and examined those at the time. So what then the lead ontologist from IKEA says is that the benefit of ontologies and instances following those ontologies is that we can craft a straightforward, transparent experience that actually asks upfront and knows what to ask. So that's quite something. So basically, what we're doing now is running some data labs. We are trying to look at how to create a top-level metadata for just data annotation. And for that, we are inviting everybody who is working with data, who is interested in it from all kinds of perspectives. We have really people coming in from lots of different domains. One is focusing with the Swedish health data innovation platform at Chalmers Industry Technique. So we are going to be based at GoCo Health Innovation City, but we are also doing it online simultaneously. So it's always hybrid. So people plug in when they have time, when they want to contribute with some of their thoughts and ideas. So on the 11th, there'll be a whole bunch of people who are super inspiring. On 12th, we would global brainstorming, as we call it. We've done this times before. It's really intense. It's really fantastic because we connect to lots of places around the world as well where people have contributions to make. And to say, what does it mean to have just data and how do we define these terms? And then we will take the results forward in Linköping Science Park as part of the week that it's Linköping EU Capital of Innovation. And we are taking over GoTo10, and we are going to have another big lab where we then work also with space data and with transportation data and other domains to see how that works. Feel free to join us. I'd love to have some of your ideas on this. I always end on this one because, Linus said, tell us what the future is about. Well, actually, we always say this, which is a reworking, something that's probably very well known to you, which is that we don't predict the future, we invent it. Thanks very much.
It was a brilliant speech. Do you have any thoughts or questions on this visionary approach?
I think everybody needs a drink.
Yeah, soon enough will come. First you have to ask a question. Then thanks again for a great presentation and this insight into a knowledge graph and the future of using AI in different ways. So I thank you for that. And another applause. Thanks for everyone. And here is a small gift.
Oh.
Of course. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. So we are closing into the ending of this day. We're not ending yet. We're gonna, of course, have some drinks as well. So we had I'm just gonna try to wrap up a little bit. What we talked about is afternoon we have had 6 topics on different aspects of AI. We start off seeing from a corporate perspective with a vision of integrating AI in the innovation workflow and how they made that possible and what efforts it took, which was kind of interesting starting point. And then we had a specific view on the challenges of communicating between R&D and IP and different stakeholders and what their experience is on that take in a panel discussion, which is also a great view. And then talking about valuation, how to review things from a better point. We had a summary from looking at different tools for drafting and reviewing applications and how they may assist. And in this huge collaboration, and we see there's a multiplicity of tools, and it's sort of accelerating. So it's an ocean of possibilities right now. And then after the break, we have this sort of insight to what this effect is on the searching side. How do we approach this in a better way? What kind of tools do we have? How do we employ them to bring in a better process in place? Because we have to embrace the change, although we'll be driven by it, but we can use it to make better. And then we saw how then to build more complex R&D scenarios. We can map different data pools, not just in the patents, but look at the legal data, the commercial data, the PR data, marketing data, and the IP data. And if you pull that together, you can actually extract and make new decisions. So if we're able to pull that together using these new tools, that's also a new opportunity because there's too much data. It's not the problem with data. The challenge is actually to extract the information on it. And then finally, a view of the future of this, both the ethical part of the data, how do we apply it justly, how do we apply it, how do we break the biases, and how we can use new ways to interact with knowledge graphs, and also bring in the culture perspective. We see here that actually these AI systems may make the people that we normally think of less performant be the high performant. So this is also a way of equalizing ourselves as human beings, and that perspective has been sort of neglected in the open AI, and now we're able to bring it back, for instance, via ICF. So I think that's very important too. So in the end, it comes back in every presentation that it's about the partnership. It's about augmented intelligence. So it's about, I actually picked this one because it's about an AI or whatever, proposing something, and you can reflect about it, when you make the decision. You are the driver. You have to decide what you actually want to gain with using these new tools, and what you think is what is the important output of this when you're using it. So when I have reasonable expectations on it. We saw it several times. It's not going to be 60-80%. It's going to be maybe 10, maybe 20. And it's you that are able to assess it, or you should assess it to make the decisions. So artificial intelligence is a term which should be, I think, personally, changed to augmented intelligence. We are augmented by it. It's not an artificial thing that takes over and takes our decisions. So that's, we hope this day was giving, and so this broad perspective of different solutions. Now it's going to have a cocktail. But from me, on behalf of Johnny, so being organizers behind this event from the Uppdragshuset and IP Screener, we thank you for attending this event and look forward for the next seminar. Thank you very much for attending. Yes, that was a good question. I forgot to mention it. The slides are going to be available in a slightly sort of, well, they're going to be approved first by the speakers, and I'm going to upload a link so you can access the slides. Also, we will be hosting for the people that actually attended. The streaming session will be available as well, so you can review it again when you think it's a boring Sunday. Whatever should I do? Well, let's check this AI seminar. Yeah, it's great stuff. So now welcome out in the lobby and to have some drinks and just chat further and network around the AI and the thoughts about it. We look forward to have your also opinions on it. We will also send out a short survey to see if you have any thoughts about how to improve it even further in the future. Thanks very much for joining once more. I look forward to have a chat outside.